Hello everybody, welcome to Snyder's Inc. And today we're going to do a timeline video. I haven't done one of these in a while, so I'm going to do another one here. And this one for 1973, that's from a channel called Weird History. Give them a subscribe. But this is timeline 1973, it just says everything that happened in 73. So we're going to find out what happened in 73. Are you guys ready? Of course you're ready. Let's go.
1973 started off with some much-needed good vibes. The end of a long and bloody war was finally in sight, and America took the space race to a stellar new level. Plus, there were some seriously nifty records to spin. But by the end of the year, everyone was running on fumes. Literally. We're going to talk about the news, culture, sports, and entertainment, and all that was weird in the 70s. This is Timeline.
Alrighty.
Settle in for some historic news because today we're talking 1973. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and let us know in the comments below what you would like to bring back from the 70s. Now, I'll see you on the dark side of the moon, or the end of the episode, whichever comes first. This is 1973. The year would start off with a little schoolhouse rock.
It's Schoolhouse Rocking, the chip off the block of your favorite Schoolhouse Rock.
Sticking with catchy tunes, Elvis made history with his Aloha from Hawaii concert event on January 14th. The hour-long show was broadcast live via satellite from Honolulu International Center, today known as the Neil S. Blaisdell Center, to approximately 36 countries in Asia and the Oceania region. The concert was the first live satellite broadcast featuring a single performer. It also held the record for sweatiest human on television until Jimmy Swaggart gave his infamous "I have sinned" speech 15 years later.
I have sinned against you, my Lord.
The very next day, President Richard Nixon announced the United States had suspended all offensive actions against North Vietnam. The announcements came just weeks after Nixon bombarded North Vietnam with a 2-week bombing campaign, during which American forces dropped over 20,000 tons of ordnance on Haiphong and Hanoi. 2 weeks later, the U.S. signed the Paris Peace Accords with North Vietnam, the Viet Cong, and South Vietnam on January 27th.
Insane. There was an issue of Vietnam in 1973.
The agreement called for an immediate ceasefire across Vietnam, and for the United States to begin withdrawing its forces and dismantling its bases. In return, North Vietnam agreed to release their prisoners of war, including every captive American.
Today, the largest contingents of repatriated prisoners so far, 60 men, were flown from Clark to Travis Air Force Base, California.
It was effectively the end of the U.S.'s involvement in the Vietnam War.
I'm gonna give you 4 hours to get away, and I'm coming after you. 4 hours, don't waste any more precious time.
Lean, mean, knockout-producing hitting machine George Foreman defeated heavyweight champion Joe Frazier at the Sunshine Showdown in Kingston, Jamaica on January.
He said Kingston, I was so intrigued to see what you were about to say. But yeah, these are 2 names I know. I don't know much about 1970s, so most of this is going to be unknown to me, but like, I know the name Joe Frazier, I know the Foreman guy, so yeah, I know both of these guys.
January 22nd. Foreman, the 3-1 underdog, took the undefeated Frazier off his feet 6 times before the referee stopped the fight, 1 minute and 35 seconds into the second round.
It is over.
God, I think you can knock someone out like 6 times and the ref was like, okay, we get the point now. We're gonna end this. Again, you knocked him out about 6 times. I think he's been embarrassed enough.
In the second round, George Foreman is the heavyweight champion of the world.
Foreman would defend his heavyweight title twice before losing it in one of the most famous boxing matches in history. More on that next year. On the same day as Foreman's victory, the U.S. Supreme Court reached its landmark decision in the case of Roe v. Wade, deciding that the American Constitution conferred the right to have an abortion. The 7-2 decision argued that a woman's right to an abortion was protected by the privacy rights guaranteed in the 14th Amendment. The court relied upon the 1965 case of Griswold v. Connecticut.
To think this is still a fucking issue to this day is insane. This is still an issue. on if the woman has a right to an abortion. It's still a fucking issue that people talk about to this day. To this fucking day. Like, that's insane. Like, why is this still a fucking issue to this day?
As precedent, which established the right to privacy with respect to intimate practices. The decision would stand for nearly 50 years until Roe v. Wade was overturned on June 24th, 2022 in a 6-3 decision.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this is insanity. Why is this still a fucking issue to this day?
The Supreme Court in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization overturned Roe v. Wade and returned the issue of abortion rights to individual states on June 24th, 2022 in a 6-3 decision. Not to be outdone by Foreman or the Supreme Court, former President Lyndon Baines Johnson also made headlines on January 22nd when he passed away.
So he made headlines by dying. That's what you get. He's like, I'm gonna make my headline. I'm gonna die now. I'm just gonna die right now. That's how everyone. I'm gonna make so much headlines with this.
Johnson initially entered the White House as John F. Kennedy's vice president and was famously sworn in as commander-in-chief on board Air Force One after Kennedy's death on November 22, 1963. Despite popular successes with the Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Act, Johnson received harsh criticism for his inability to achieve victory in the Vietnam War, and many of the changes under his presidency were undone by his successor, Richard Nixon. Speaking of,
I have a feeling that that's a situation where he's meant to be a vice president, right? Not official leader. So some people can handle and know what to do when they become leader and have power, that type of power. And then there's some who don't. Donald Trump's a good example. And this is a good example of a guy who like got to how he didn't know what to do with it. He couldn't win because of it.
Nixon, at the end of January, Watergate burglars G. Gordon Liddy and James McCord were convicted of conspiracy, burglary, and placing illegal recording devices for their roles in the break-in. 4 other burglars, including Liddy's fellow former CIA agent E. Howard Hunt, had already pled guilty earlier in the month. With convictions and guilty pleas secured, Judge John J. Soraka began threatening the group with severe prison sentences unless they spilled the beans on their co-conspirators, namely President Nixon. Stay tuned to see how this whole Watergate thing shakes out. Just a few hours north of D.C. that same day, makeup-loving band Kiss played their first ever show at the Coventry Club in Queens, New York, for a crowd of less than 10 people. Kiss would go on to enjoy huge success as an arena rock band for much
just a little bit of that success, just only a little bit
of the decade. They slapped their painted faces on every piece of merchandise imaginable, including comic books, a pinball game, toys, condoms, and even the Kiss casket. Moving into February,
there was a Kiss casket? That is freaking amazing. I won't be better than that. That's amazing.
In the world of music, Iggy and the Stooges released their 3rd studio album, Raw Power. Boasting a thrashing hard rock sound, the chaotic vocals of frontman Iggy Pop, and a mix by none other than the Thin White Duke himself, David Bowie, Raw Power became the group's signature record. Raw Power is considered to be the most important punk rock album ever recorded. Fresh off the signing of the Paris Peace Accords from the previous month, the first American POWs were released by North Vietnam on February 12th. 142 of 591 prisoners were set free in Hanoi and flown back to the U.S. for tearful reunions with their loved ones at Travis Air Force Base in California. The final American POW was released just over a month later, on March 29th. Speaking of notable...
I'm curious. I'm curious how many of, like... Because they had 500 captive to release. How many did they have that actually, like, died in that, like, from being captured? Or did they just keep everyone and torture them?
Releases, pop group Tony Orlando and Dawn's hit single, Tie a Yellow Ribbon Round the Old Oak Tree, was released 1 week later on February 19th. The song, told from the point of view of a man returning home from prison and asking his love to tie a yellow ribbon around the oak tree in front of her house if he is still welcome, would hit the top 10 in 10 different countries. The catchy melodramatic jam is notable for being referenced by Nicolas Cage in Con Air.
We'll be right back.
1,
New stick shifters, Honda Pinto Gremlin. May look funny, but they're no joke. Stick shifters, get them in gear. Honda Pinto Gremlin, gonna disappear.
In late February, members of the controversial group, the American Indian Movement, began a 71-day occupation of Wounded Knee, South Dakota, on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Around 200 people participated in the occupation in protest of the U.S. government's failure to honor tribal treaties and of Sioux Tribal Chairman Richard Wilson and his alleged corruption, after Wilson narrowly avoided impeachment earlier that month. Gunfire was exchanged between protesters and federal officers nearly every day, resulting in 2 deaths and 1 serious injury, before AIM leaders finally...
I'm shocked there was only 2 deaths? 2 deaths and 1 injured? Like, that's insane. It's like 200 people were involved in it. That's actually shocking.
negotiated a surrender on May 8th.
The occupation of Wounded Knee ended yesterday. Only 15 of the occupants were arrested. The others were allowed to go free.
Moving into March, Pink Floyd began a 736-week occupation of the Billboard 200 with the release of their landmark album, The Dark Side of the Moon, on March 1st. The concept album was a mega hit, selling over 45 million copies and going platinum 14 times in the UK. And The Dark Side of the Moon's album art has become one of the most recognizable images in music. If you sync up the album to play alongside The Wizard of Oz, well, just do it and see what happens. The next day, 8 members of the Palestinian terrorist group known as Black September took control of the Saudi Arabian embassy in Khartoum, Sudan, taking 10 diplomats hostage, including officials from America, Belgium, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan. In exchange for the hostages, the terrorists demanded the release of several captive Palestinians being held in Israeli prisons, as well as the release of Sirhan Sirhan, the man convicted of assassinating Robert Kennedy in 1968. Tragically, the terrorists ended 3 of the hostages after negotiations stalled, before ultimately surrendering to Sudanese authorities.
It's insane. That's insane that people, like, that's not the first time that's happened. Like, that's a fact that that's a thing that's happened a couple times where people will hold a big group of people hostage all just to get prisoners released. I've never understood it. Like, they see them in high regard and would be like, no, we're gonna risk our own lives just to get them possibly released from prison.
3 days later. Turning to sports? Well, sort of. New York Yankees pitcher Fritz Peterson and Mike Kikich each called bizarre press conferences on the 5th of March to let the world know that they had traded their wives. And not just wives, they had...
What? I just did a wife swap. Wait, I heard you. How does that even work? How did that conversation go? I want to be in that whole room. I want to be in that conversation where they were talking. Not only the wives were talking, and like all of them were talking about how they should switch because they were probably more attracted to the other. Like, I have so many questions. You would not believe how many things. I have so many questions.
Had traded their entire families, including their children and even their pets. Thanks for the update, guys. How'd it work out? Better than you might have expected. While Kikich and the former Mrs. Peterson broke up rather quickly, Peterson and the former Mrs. Kikich are still together at the time of this video airing, almost 50 years later.
So this man just got himself like his perfect wife. He just like... Now, the fact you switch your children and all that is a wholly different thing. That's kind of messed up. That's a bit messed up. But the fact that, like, one of them broke up, one of them is still together to this day, 50 years. That is unbelievable. Wow.
11 awkward family dinner dates later, Queen Elizabeth XI opened a new London Bridge on March 15th. The new bridge was actually the 3rd London Bridge. London Bridge II stood for roughly 600 years. It was sold to an oil tycoon named Robert McCulloch, who had the bridge taken apart and rebuilt in Lake Havasu City, Arizona. A popular rumor suggested that McCulloch purchased...
Wait, so like, what do you mean he took it down and like he took it down somewhere? It's like, no, I want you to do the bridge over there. They're like, just put the things up, brought them over there, and just put it together. What? Huh?
The old London Bridge by mistake, thinking he was actually buying the way groovier Tower Bridge. But the tycoon denied this until his dying day, 4 years later. Over in Hollywood, Marlon Brando refused to accept his Best Actor Oscar for his role as Don Vito Corleone in The Godfather on March 27th. Native American actress Maria Louise Cruz, also known as Sacheen Littlefeather, spoke on the actor's behalf, reading a statement written by Brando explaining that he was declining the award in protest of the portrayal of Native Americans in film.
And he has asked me to tell you in a very long speech, which I cannot share with you presently because of time.
Brando was the second actor to refuse an Oscar in as many years. George C. Scott had declined to accept his Best Actor award for his role as Patton in 1971 because he objected to the idea of a ceremony that pitted actors against each other. Good point, George. Heading into April, a notable first. The first mobile phone call was made by Motorola employee Martin Cooper on the 3rd. Cooper made the call on a shoebox-sized prototype that weighed 2.5 pounds. Who did he call? A rival employee at AT&T, who was busy working on his own prototype. Can you hear me now? Because that dunk was deafening. The next day, we head to New York City, where the World Trade Center opened its doors to become the world's tallest building. At the time, the Twin Towers took the top spot from the previous record holder. Another famous New York City landmark, the Empire State Building. Although the World Trade Center would only briefly hold the record before losing the title to the Sears Tower the following year, we were really into the tall building race in the 70s. Hollywood still found the time to throw King Kong off the Twin Towers in the 1976 remake. Apparently, that's how they test skyscrapers in New York City. Speaking of high art, the massively influential avant-garde painter Pablo Picasso packed away his mortal easel on April 8th. Picasso was a co-founder of the Cubist movement, an abstract art style found in many of his most famous works, including this 1937 masterpiece.
What the hell was I? Hold on.
Found in many of his most famous works, including...
What the hell am I looking at here? This is amazing artwork, but what in the Lord of Hell am I looking at here? Jesus, Lord of Hell, this is some shit right here.
This 1937 masterpiece. The master and his wife were in the middle of dinner with friends when he collapsed, succumbing to heart failure at the age of 91. 12-year-old Carolyn King took the field as the first girl to play Little League Baseball on May 10th, defying the organization's long-standing rule that disallowed girls from playing. In response, Little League Baseball revoked the Ypsilanti American Little League's charter, effectively banning them from playing. King and the city of Ypsilanti filed a discrimination lawsuit, and though the lawsuit was dismissed, Little League Baseball eventually dropped its boys-only rule in 1975. America's first space station, Skylab, was launched on May 14th. Skylab was 118 feet tall and weighed 77 tons, or the equivalent of about 40 Chevrolet Monte Carlos. Skylab housed its first three-man crew 11 days later, when astronauts boarded the station to make repairs and conduct experiments for the next 28 days. Over the next few years, the station would house 3 separate crews for extended periods of time, collecting vital information about the sun and the effects of living in space on the human body. 2 weeks later, City Councilman Thomas Bradley defeated incumbent Sam Yorty to become the first black mayor of Los Angeles on the 29th of May. A former LAPD officer who retired from the force to practice law, Bradley would go on to be re-elected to an unprecedented 5 terms and made 2 unsuccessful bids to become governor of California. Turning the dial to music, Paul McCartney and Wings released their only good song, Live and Let Die, on June 1st.
Their only good song, that's amazing.
The song was the theme to the James Bond film of the same name. Although it was far from McCartney's biggest single, Live and Let Die nabbed an Academy Award nomination for Best Song, as well as a Grammy nomination. Not bad for a tune that sounds like it was about his former bandmates. Sticking with music, just 2 weeks later, crooner Marvin Gaye released his mega single, Let's Get It On. An emotional anthem about love and doing the dirty, the song became one of Gaye's signature hits. It remains one of Motown Records' most successful recordings of all time, selling 2 million copies in its first 6 weeks of release alone.
We'll be right back.
If you love almonds,
almonds? Yeah!
Really love almonds.
I do.
I do.
I do.
You'll love the Mars Almond Bar. You get an almond in every bite.
Heading into July.
No, I'm good.
Millionaire heir John Paul Getty III was kidnapped in Rome. Getty's grandfather, the infamously frugal oil tycoon J. Paul Getty Sr., refused to pay his teenage grandson's ransom of $17 million. He eventually agreed to a discounted ransom of $3.2 million, but only after the kidnappers mailed their hostage's severed ear to a Roman newspaper. But the ordeal didn't end there. We'll find out more later this year.
Wait, hold on. So this guy got kidnapped, and his grandfather has a bunch of money. They're like, you need to pay this money. He's like, nah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm not paying you shit. And they're like, we'll get this. Like, yeah, it's fine. Just, I'm not paying you anything.
On July 20th, legendary actor and martial artist Bruce Lee passed away at the age of 32. Lee had been in Hong Kong to discuss his upcoming film, Game of Death. The actor had previously been diagnosed with cerebral edema 2 months earlier, after collapsing in Golden Harvest Studios while recording some dialogue for Enter the Dragon. The cause of Lee's death has been the subject of intense speculation, blaming everything from a gangland assassination to an evil curse. The curse theory would gain more momentum 30 years later, when Lee's son Brandon was fatally shot in a freak accident while filming the action movie The Crow. Moving into August, musician Stevie Wonder fell into a coma after suffering a head injury in a serious car accident on the 6th of August. The singer was being driven to a radio station by his cousin to promote his latest album, when their car crashed into the back of a flatbed truck. Wonder remained in a coma for 4
How did that even happen? How'd you crash into the thing of a flatbed truck? Like, how the hell did... Okay, then.
days. He even temporarily lost his sense of smell, which, come on, universe, don't do that to Stevie.
Hey, you're supposed to be the fastest thing in the valley, man, but that can't be your car. It must be your mama's car. I'm sort of embarrassed to be this close to you. Well, I'm not surprised.
September would start out with some sad news, as Lord of the Rings author J.R.R. Tolkien set sail for the Undying Lands at age 81. The Lord of the Rings has sold more than 50 million copies to date, and has been translated into roughly 30 different languages, including the Black Speech of Mordor, probably.
Bridge, this is the captain. What's happened?
Talk about a movie, any form of fashion I have never watched. Lord of the Rings or Star Trek. Never watched any of them. I've never watched a Star Wars movie fully. Like, I've missed Game of Thrones. I've not watched, like, anything you all call, like, that the world calls classic TV series and that, and movies. I've never watched them. It's... I just don't. I don't know why. I can't even give you an answer. I just haven't.
2 Romulan battle cruisers, Captain, and they're heading right for us.
I would like to do movie reviews, but I don't know if anyone would be interested in it.
Elsewhere, Wonder Woman's transparent plane carries the Super Friends seaward.
I wish I could join you in Aquaman.
Thanks, Batman, but this operation is best handled by 2.
Buffalo Bills star running back O.J. Simpson slashed his way down the field for a record.
O.J. Simpson's one of those men, isn't he? Like, those ones that, like, he's very impressive. He's one of those ones you can't look out thinking of... You can't think of him as an athlete.
Breaking 250 yards on September 16th in the Bills' 31-13 win over the New England Patriots. The Heisman Trophy winner narrowly beat the league record of 247, set by Willie Ellison 2 years earlier. Simpson would finish out the year as the first player to rush for over 2,000 yards in a season. He went on to be inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame in 1985 and found some success as an actor, until, well, you know. Sticking with sports, decorated tennis pro Billie Jean King defeated former champ Bobby Riggs in a much ballyhooed exhibition match dubbed the Battle of the Sexes on September 20th. The 55-year-old gambler and hustler Riggs began challenging female players earlier in the year, goading his potential opponents with rants like, "Women belong in the bedroom and kitchen," in that order. Riggs was no match for the 30-year-old #1 ranked female player, King, who walloped him 3 games in a row to win the match in front of 30,000 fans at the Houston Astrodome, and an estimated 90 million more on television. The 5th of October...
Oh my god, this man probably lost his mind when he lost because he was trying to be a dick to women and a woman. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna whoop your ass in this thing. I'm just gonna beat you. Send that little message to you.
October saw the release of eccentric ivory-tickling rock star Elton John's 7th album. Goodbye, Yellow Brick Road. Goodbye contained a number of hit singles, including Candle in the Wind, Benny and the Jets, Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, and the title track. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road has sold over 30 million copies worldwide. The very next day, Syrian and Egyptian forces launched a coordinated attack on Israel, with the aim of reclaiming territory lost during the Third Arab-Israeli War in 1967. Dubbed the Yom Kippur War, the attack was specifically intended to take Israeli forces by surprise, as it occurred on the holiest day of the year in the Jewish faith. Although the armed conflict only lasted a few weeks, with a ceasefire going into effect on the 25th of October, the fallout was further-reaching, particularly for Israel and its allies. Elvis and Priscilla Presley divorced after 6 years of marriage on October 9th. The two had begun seeing each other when Priscilla was 14 and Elvis was 24. Jailhouse Rock indeed. Although the king frequently slept with other women, and Priscilla had begun an affair with her karate instructor that nearly resulted in Elvis hiring a hitman to take the guy out, the split was amicable, and the two remained close for the rest of Elvis's life. Sticking with the world of music,
I love the line here where he's like, yeah, I just had, an affair that almost caused Elvis to buy a hitman to take the guy out. Like, that's just normal. That's what everyone does, right? God damn. Elvis almost lost his goddamn mind.
Country music legend Dolly Parton released her fan-favorite single, Jolene, on the 15th of October, scoring her second #1 hit as a solo artist. The song is Parton's most recorded tune, with everyone from Olivia Newton-John to the White Stripes doing their own covers. Parton later claimed in an interview that she wrote the lyrics to Jolene on the same day she penned the words to another song that would become a massively popular cover, I Will Always Love You.
We'll be right back.
Magnavox presents Odyssey, the electronic game of the future. Odyssey easily attaches to any brand TV, black and white or color, to create a closed-circuit electronic playground.
The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC if you're nasty, enacted an oil embargo on the 17th of October. The embargo punished the United States and several other countries for their decision to assist Israel by reducing its exports by 5% per month until Israel withdrew its forces from the contested territories. By December, oil exports had been reduced by over 75%, leading to one of the worst energy crises in modern history. Gas rationing in the U.S. saw high prices and long lines that sometimes stretched for miles. President Nixon asked filling stations to refrain from selling gasoline on Saturday nights or Sundays. In some cases, cars would be restricted to buying gas on odd or even-numbered days, depending on which type of number was the last digit of their license plate. And in the UK, people were encouraged to only heat a single room of their homes during the winter. On the topic of Nixon, Tricky Dick ousted Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox and accepted the resignations of Attorney General Elliot Richardson and Deputy Attorney General William Ruckelshaus on October 20th. The culling became unofficially known as the Saturday Night Massacre, as Nixon cleaned house at the Justice Department in a desperate attempt to conceal his involvement in the Watergate scandal. But it didn't quite pan out for the embattled commander-in-chief. The public was outraged by Nixon's behavior, and 21 members of Congress began calling for his impeachment.
Hey, Fish! Who loves you, baby? You're beautiful.
Moving into November, beloved comedian David Stringbean Aikman and his wife Estelle were gunned down by burglars in their Nashville, Tennessee home on the 10th. Aikman was a popular fixture at Nashville's Grand Ole Opry.
That's insane, just like gun him down. Robbers just took lives like nothing. Like absolutely nothing.
Opry, as well as a main cast member on Hee Haw. The murderers, cousins Marvin and John Brown, had heard Aikman kept large amounts of cash on hand, so they broke into his cabin and waited for him to return home, ambushing him and Estelle as they walked through the door. The Browns each received 2 life sentences, and
well, if your thing is you wanted to go the money, why did you wait for him to come home just to gun him down? Like, you ain't gonna get more money out of that situation. That's just stupid. The thought process is stupid.
While Marvin died in prison, John Brown would eventually be paroled after serving 41 years in 2014. What? Nixon delivered his infamous quotes to a crowd of journalists at Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida on November.
Oh yeah, that's the place to do the presidential press conference. Walt Disney World. Why did you do Walt Disney World? Why was that where you chose? That's just weird.
November 17th, saying the infamous...
People have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
Your attention, please. We will soon be landing at Westworld, the ultimate resort. Each resort is maintained by reliable computer technology.
Abducted Getty heir John Paul Getty III was finally freed by his captors on December 15th. The kidnappers dropped Paul off on the side of a stretch of road in the middle of a downpour. Getty never fully recovered from the incident. He developed a serious drug addiction that resulted in a tragic overdose in 1981, which left him paralyzed and unable to speak. He passed away at age 54 in 2011.
Must have left my heart.
That's insane. So he had that kidnapping affected him so much that he developed a drug addiction that pretty much messed his life up for the rest of time.
My room. Don't hand me into that crap. You better have the money, or it's gonna be all around Chicago that you're welched. You won't be able to get a game of jacks.
And that's how 1970.
Well, that's a hell of a way to end it.
3 came to a close with a sting and a hiss of pea soup. 1974 was grooving up over the horizon, bringing with it the end of the Watergate scandal, the crowning of a new home run king, and the abduction of another wealthy teenager that would go in a shockingly different direction. But that's all for next year. Coming soon.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you thought of this timeline video. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, comment what you think down below. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see y'all for the next one.